My wife and I got married 2 years ago and have been together for 7 years. She gave me my 2 fantastic stepsons and 6 weeks ago blessed me with a daughter. Now, our daughter was planned. I wanted at least one biological child. She told me at that point that if she were to have a baby, she would want to stay home for at least the first year so she could exclusively breastfeed, and I immediately agreed. We were in a good financial position, we had money stashed away in multiple different accounts. We were set. So I did agree to this, which probably makes me an AH. But our finances are not doing so hot anymore. It's not even her fault. My brother stole $25,000 off of us, got a hold of me and my wife's joint bank info. Somehow I am pressing charges, but lawyers said this could take months to even be put in front of a judge. I cannot make this work on just my income anymore because we are only left with $3,000 in the bank account and our rent is $2,800. So I asked my wife to look for a job and explained why. She immediately said, "I fucking hate you," and walked off. I was able to reapproach it later. She locked herself in the bedroom crying. And she said she is rethinking our marriage now because the one thing she asked for is that she gets to stay home for a year, and I agreed to it, and now I'm asking her to send her kid off with a complete stranger and give up exclusively breastfeeding, and she is sickened by me. Said she never would have agreed to have a baby with me if she had known I would back out of our agreement 6 weeks in. Said that my brother stealing thousands from us is something I need to fix on my own because it's my family, and if I force her to work she will 100% divorce me, no question. Am I wrong in asking her to get a job? She will barely speak to me now and won't look me in the eye at all. Cries a lot. But I literally cannot do this financially without her. Yes, she gets child support from the boy's dad and it does help out, but not as much as I need. ETA. My wife's reaction was not bold. I wanted a child. She told me for easily 3 months straight that her only stipulation was that she didn't work, and straight up told me before even getting pregnant that she would never forgive me if I backed out and changed my mind about her staying home for a year. 90% of the money that my brother stole was money she worked overtime for, just to ensure that she did not have to work. So no, it's not bold. I don't even blame her. She begged me and warned me not to back out on it, given that it was her only request, and that's exactly what I did. She says I'm just as untrustworthy as my brother, and a part of me feels like that's true. I didn't keep a good enough eye on my brother, which is how he even got a hold of our bank info. It was in my wallet, that I left in the car when he was in there one day. Now she is suffering because of my family fuck up. I'm at a loss, but no, she's not being bold, insensitive or rude. She warned me and I did the exact thing I promised her I would not do. $25,000 is only what we had saved for the bills. We have separate accounts saved for each kid. My brother and I are twins. Despite not technically being identical, we look a whole hell of a lot alike. He took my info, he went to the bank and withdrew, closed out the account. He didn't have my ID. The bank asked him my security questions and last 4 of my social, which he knows. Handed over the money to him immediately following and closed my whole account out. I didn't even know until my paycheck couldn't be delivered. I called the bank to ask what the hold up was. They told me that I closed the account 4 days prior. I argued it, they showed me the surveillance feed to prove I did it, and it was my brother. Am I the only one here that feels like something incredibly suspicious is going on here? Additionally, his pregnant wife worked overtime so she could stay with her infant, and now he wants her to get a job. That was her one, non-negotiable term. I feel awful for his wife. Sakura_777 commented. It gets so much worse in the comments. Highlights from OP include: she threatened divorce because I didn't tell her that he stole the money until I brought up that she needed to start working again and gave her the reasoning why. Mixed with the fact that when I asked her for a child, she gave me 3 months of constant, "I'm not working for a year and I don't think you understand that" talks, as well as telling me that I had better not back out. Just to have me back out. So she said I'm just as untrustworthy as my brother because 90% of that saved money was actually hers. She worked 50-60 hours a week to save that money to ensure she would 100% not have to work. She does, unfortunately. She's a kick-ass mom and our daughter is seriously thriving because of my wife, but she does have PPD. Being around anyone makes her feel off, so I feel like a complete dick even telling her she needs to work, but I don't know what else to do. So not only did his pregnant wife work overtime so she could stay with her child, she has PPD and has just recovered from one of the most stressful, painful things a human can go through. Someone in the comments summed up my thoughts nicely. Dude, her vagina isn't even healed yet after being ripped apart by a baby's head and you want her to work? She has PPD and just having a shower can seem like a day's work and you want her to replace what your brother stole? She's been physically ripped apart, she's bleeding, swollen, her breasts leak and ache, she needs to pump, feed every 2 hours, she's depressed, she's been stolen from, lied to, and then told you are breaking a promise that was conditional to her agreeing against her wants to have your baby so you'd have one that's really yours. You are tired from working one job and you've been stolen from. Who has it worse? Who needs to fix the mess your brother made? Squirrel Girl VA responded. He didn't tell her that his brother stole the money? That's one hell of a thing for him to leave out of the original post. I mean, I was willing to give him the slight benefit of the doubt up to this point even though it was sketchy as fuck. I wouldn't have necessarily faulted him for asking her to work because this was an extreme situation. Their entire life savings had been wiped out via theft, leaving them with nothing to make up for the loss of her income. But neglecting to tell her about his brother and the theft? That makes the already super sketchy situation even sketchier. I doubt very seriously that the bank would have let anyone withdraw and close an account without an ID, let alone for that much money. If they legit allowed him to do that, then I'd sue the shit out of the bank. Assuming that this even happened. I have to agree with others. He stole that money, possibly with or without the help of his brother. Elder_emo_ also commented. I worked in banking for years. I wouldn't close out an account that large without ID. One account owner, on a joint account, was enough to close an account though. If this is true, that person is 100,000% fired. Also, most bank security systems rewrite video overnight. If we were ever robbed, we'd have to go burn a DVD to make sure the last few hours were saved before it was recorded over. Lastly, if Appa's in the US, in order for his brother to take out $25,000 in cash, a currency transaction report would be required. Any cash transaction over $10,000 requires it. This form requires ID, full social, and ID information as input as well. It's federal law. ETA. We also did not have access to camera footage, just monitors. They were in an area not accessible to customers, and we absolutely wouldn't have just shown it to someone making such a claim. Jazemafin responded. The bank would be so incredibly liable for not refusing service without an ID that would be the first thing I'd be looking for in the video footage. Bank cameras are usually positioned so that the teller's desk between themselves and the customer is very visible, due to bill counting concerns. If the teller saw an ID, it would be readily apparent in the footage. Period. On top of that, I can't imagine any bank having $25,000 laying around to shell out to one guy who decides to close his account that day. I worked at a large, multinational bank and even we had limits on how much cash someone could take out at once unless they requested it in advance. An amount that large without early notice would be a cashier's check at best. Which would easily be traceable, because we'd be able to see the account that cashed the check. Yay, it's a different system than a regular check, but still traceable. I don't care how alike his non-identical twin brother and him look. This entire "my brother stole the money" story is just another way for him to shift the blame and responsibility of the situation off of himself and onto someone else. When he does accept some of the blame, it's just, I had the account card in my wallet. Dude needs to stop expecting everyone else around him to accept blame and responsibility for problems he caused. If he worked as hard to fix the problem as he works to shift blame, responsibility elsewhere, then he'd be able to recoup that loss in no time without his wife having to do the one thing she insisted she wouldn't do. Sulpicia commented. I worked at a bank for a while, and the rule was ID for anything over 5,000, and those usually required notice ahead of time. Sometimes we could do it, sometimes even that much would drain our machines on a busy day, so we'd have to say no. And, of course, as mentioned, you have to fill out a form for a transaction of that size. I suppose it is possible for his twin to have stolen his ID as well. It's the only thing I can think of to make this more plausible. I'm assuming this was a joint or account and not a joint end, so I'm not even going to get into that law. Either way, it's still fishy as hell. There are a lot of rules in place to avoid something like this happening, and if it had happened in the bank I worked at, you can bet the bank would be taking that loss and getting those customers back their money sooner than that. Because if those rules were broken, it is on them, and my bank would definitely rather have been out a couple thousand over being sued. I'm not saying it would be immediate, but it would most likely be faster than this timeline. Tellers can be dumb. I made plenty of dumb mistakes, don't get me wrong, but they aren't usually that dumb.